Hey everyone, my name's Yvonne Villarreal. I'm a reporter here at the Times, and joining me today is the scariest father to ever walk the planet. It's Joe Morton, who plays Papa Pope on Scandal. Do you like the Papa Pope?
I love the Papa Pope, yes.
Okay, so we don't have to call you Rowan, Eli. You like the...
You can call me those things as well.
Okay, Papa Pope
is fine.
Okay, and I had to say, like, before we went live, you were just staring at me, and I got really nervous because I'm like, this guy already terrifies. So I don't have any reason to be concerned. I know you know people.
I only kill people while we're shooting. I'm on hiatus.
You're on hiatus. Good to know. Well, I mean, you made me really seasick this season. I couldn't tell if Papa Pope was good or bad or good or bad or good again. So, I mean, how was that for you to play that out?
I think it's terrific, and I think what's wonderful about the character is that he is seemingly emotionally invulnerable. Yet his strongest weapon is also his greatest vulnerability, which is his daughter Olivia. So that's why that kind of seesaw effect of well, I think he's a good guy, but maybe he's not. He's also filled with strategy and changes the strategy as things around him change.
Right.
So again, the seesaw effect.
The seesaw. Well, I mean, people describe him as mean, as menacing. Do you think those terms apply, or is that too easy? Is it more complicated than that?
I think generally speaking, when you're playing a villain, any villain thinks that what he or she is doing is making the world a better place. You can't play, from an acting point of view, you can't play a negative. You can only play a positive. So the positive is that he is protecting the Republic and he's protecting his daughter all at the same time.
Do you think it's the job that makes him this person, or does he have to already be that person to fulfill a job like this?
Well, I don't know all of his history as of yet. I would think it's probably the chicken and egg kind of syndrome. It's difficult to tell which came first. I'm going to guess on a certain level that there was a job where he wasn't quite as emotionally detached as he is now, and I think all the things having to do with Maya, his wife, and so on and so forth, sort of made him more and more kind of aloof.
When you go home, do you tell your kids, see, it could have been a lot worse with me?
No, because when you go home, people tell you things like you have to take out the garbage and clean your, so none of those things apply.
I mean, what's the scariest thing you've ever done as a father?
Scariest thing I've ever done as a father? Well, I mean, when you have children, you have to find ways of sort of teaching them how to live in this world. And there are things, without getting specific about it, there are things that parents have to do that on the outside could seem heartless or whatever. Do you have children?
No.
Oh, well, so that at the time, you can have a child who says, how could you do this to me? And then years later, they come back around and say, oh, I got it. I get it. I see why that had to happen the way that happened. So it's not so much being scary as trying to make decisions about what you think in the long run are going to give your children values that they're going to hold on to. And with Olivia and Rowan, it's a little dicey as to what those values might be.
Right. And you sort of came into this secretly hoping for a gig on this show, right? Because I read that you binged it on Netflix the first season.
Exactly. I'd heard about the show, certainly heard about Carrie, and hadn't seen the show, so I sat down and binged it on Netflix and thought, oh, this show is amazing. Wouldn't it be wonderful if I could find a way onto the show?
How long did it take you to binge it?
A couple of days.
Okay.
A couple of days. And then before I had an opportunity to speak to any of my representatives, I actually got a call from I think it was my manager, who said they'd like to talk to you, they'd like to bring you onto the show. So, and on top of that, because I've been playing good guys for most of my career, I actually was very, very actively looking for a really smart bad guy. And so sort of all my dreams came true at once.
Well, speaking to that, you've been in like over 70 movies, countless TV shows. We've seen you on stage. What was the experience like going to something like Scandal? Because it's not just a TV show. Like, it's a different sort of experience, especially in today's land. So talk about sort of getting initiated into that.
Well, what's great about Scandal, I mean, as I was being asked to come into it, I was actually supposed to go back to Broadway to do Capulet in Romeo and Juliet. And so when the television show was being offered, I had to make a decision about, do I want to go back to theater, because I hadn't been on Broadway for a while, or do I want to do this TV show? The great thing was, once I started the television show, I realized that I was being given an opportunity to do both. that the way they write for this character, the kinds of things that he says, the monologues,
The
etc.,
monologues, yeah.
it's like being on stage. Plus, we have this thing called Twitter.
Right.
So that the response is like being in the theater. You're getting an immediate response to your performance as it's happening. So I kind of, in a very strange way, got to have my cake and eat it too.
Talk about getting into the Twitter game, because once you joined the shows, when you joined Twitter, right, you felt like, I need to be part of this.
Well, I realized that that's what the other cast members were doing. I mean, it's not anything that's required. Certainly, I'm a recurring character and not a regular, so that it wasn't something I had to do, but I thought, seems like it could be fun. Before that, I'd only thought of Facebook and Twitter and all the rest of the social media, something that I would only use if I had a project that I wanted to sell. In this case, I thought, well, let's try it. If I really hate it a lot, I won't do it. And just had a great time. The fans are terrific. The tweeting is a lot of fun. There's lots of opportunity to, I mean, at one point, we created an animation with music. I've posted all kinds of things. So it's been a lot of fun.
Has the reaction, though, been good? Because we've seen how, like, Scott Foley on countless talk shows talk about the hate he gets on Twitter. I imagine there's a little bit of hate towards Papa Pope.
What I get is something slightly different. I think what Jake got, or what Scott got, was that because he was the triangle, he was part of the triangle, all of sort of those, you know, Fitz and Olivia followers did not want this new guy involved.
Right.
With me, I get Twitter tweets more like, I love you, I hate your character, which is fine with me.
You'll take that.
Yes.
We have some questions from fans asking about Twitter, and they actually tweeted them, which is perfect. We have Nero Perla, who asks, how do you think social media has and will continue to change the experience for you and the other actors?
Well, again, because it's immediate, and because certainly it's a promotional tool for the show. I think once they started, ABC realized, oh, this is a great thing. I think other shows are now beginning to pick up to do the same sort of thing. And it gives you this immediate and kind of odd relationship with all these people that you never get a chance to meet. You know, like on Facebook, they are your friends, although I've never met them.
Right.
But you sort of forge these alliances with this group of people. So I think it's going to get larger and larger and larger. I think it's a good thing used this way. It's less anonymous and therefore less hateful in a way. I mean, I think one of the dangers of social media is that people get a chance to anonymously say all kinds of terrible things about other people. In this case, it's fairly direct and fairly clear, and they're also responding. The only thing you have to do every once in a while is remind them you're talking to the actor, not to the character.
Yeah. And did the cast give you any tips, like, hey, when you tweet, you should really use hashtags, or be sure to do did they give you any tips on what the trick is?
No, I have a partner who is very good at that, and so she was very, very helpful in terms of sort of saying, no, this is how this works. And so no, as a matter of fact, I think everyone was pretty surprised that I sort of launched into it the way I did.
Nice. How about the table read environment on the set? Because everyone is we hear how they react when they get the scripts and how just talk about being in that room and saying the words out loud for the first time with everyone there and what it's like.
I think our reactions are the same as the reactions that the audience has when they see it on television. That we are just as shocked, surprised, and in awe of the writers and Shonda Rhimes as everybody else is. There's always a lot of yelling and screaming and, you know, hands to mouth because they can't believe that they're going to have to do. I mean, watching Katie and Guillermo when they have to do their stuff, they are continually embarrassed, but enjoying what that is.
Do they do the face licking in the table read, or
no?
They save it?
So somebody reads it and then they just go crimson as they read it. So it's a lot of fun. I think it was at the end of season 2, we actually went into the Television Academy and we did the table read live on stage, and so the audience could sort of get a taste of what that was like. And that is what exactly it's like. And the reaction that we got from the audience was pretty much the reaction we had when we read that script the first time.
How about for you? What was the thing that most caught you by surprise? Was it something related to your character or someone else's character during those moments?
Well, there were two things. One was when James Bukantinsky was killed. Everybody thought, oh, what a shame. And then the very finale, you know, when I realized, oh, I am the master manipulator. I thought, oh, that's fine. I like that. I'll take that. That's great. Good.
That's great. Good.
Yeah.
You killed the president's son.
I did.
Obama needs to watch out. how about the incredibly tense relationship with Olivia? I mean, we see that there is something there. I mean, he saves the newspaper clippings, you know, the Sunday dinners, although there was some, you know, ties to that. But then we see that it was close to the finale, that scene. Well, it was the episode where James dies, and she's like, "Can you be my dad for a moment?" Talk about, I mean, that scene, you had an epic monologue on that. Talk a little bit about their relationship.
183.
183.
Right. What's beautiful about that monologue is the surprise at the very end, that he says, "All right, I'll be your dad," and then he begins to, if you will, confess about what his life has been like. But more specifically, he does two things. He talks about what it means to be command, and then even allows her, and then says to her, "So don't criticize or berate Jake so much, because that's the position he's in." But of course, the big turnaround in that is when he finally says, as far as there being a point to all of this, that point is you.
Yeah.
So it's, and that everyone should be saved. So it's one of those monologues that is so rich, and has so many hills and valleys, and constantly, you know, the door gets wider and wider and wider in terms of what he has to say. It is one of my favorites of those that I've been given.
And then he says, am I done being your dad
then
now?
He's done.
I mean, that's so like, oh.
But that's part of what I was saying before. There is this need to be emotionally invulnerable and detached. And so it is, I will hold your hand, I will take you through this moment, but when I'm done, I'm done. And then I have to go back. And I think the reason for that is, on one level, because of what happened between he and his wife, he has to feel, if I get too close, you become, meaning Olivia becomes, too vulnerable. She's, you know, open to all kinds of problems because of the way I have to go and do business. Especially if you go from the finale to back to that monologue, you realize there's nothing he could tell her, nothing. And clearly, when we go back for the next season, you know, the proverbial will hit the fan when we go back, because I'm sure it will inevitably be discovered what I've done, and so we'll see what happens.
Well, how about the monologues? We talked a little bit about the 183 one. I mean, that one, just, I mean, the facial, does it hurt your face to be so in it? Like, you're like in it. And what is the trick to memorizing these shadethrower, as my coworker Meredith Blake calls them?
With memorizing any kind of line, whether it's a monologue or not, first there are 5 questions that I ask myself always, which is, who am I? Where am I going? Who do I expect to meet? And last 2 are the most important. What do I want, and to what extent am I willing to go to get it? So that's the fundamental. The basic in terms of learning lines is you don't learn lines by rote. I'm not there thinking about how to say that next word. It's all about emotion. So within those 5 questions that I just mentioned, once I've sort of begun to figure out what the emotion through the speech is, what it is I want out of that speech, what am I delivering to Olivia or whomever else I might be talking, then it's an easy thing to remember, because now I know what I'm saying and why I'm saying.
Do they require a lot of takes, or not usually?
Not usually. I mean, it just, so far it's been fairly efficient, in that the only takes we need is are you know, whatever the director requires in terms of angles. Sometimes I'll bring something in that is unexpected, and so, you know, you'll get the proverbial, all right, we got that, let's try it this way.
Try it this way. Okay, we have another question from Gianna Kalir. If you could write season 4, what would be the next step for Rowan? Would he be brought to justice for Jerry?
First of all, I wouldn't even attempt to think about writing season 4. I mean, because anything I would come up with, I'm sure Shonda would think of something completely different.
Right, so, yeah,
I have not a clue.
Not a clue. I kind of want there to be a separate web series with Papa Pope and the Smithsonian job that he has, and his fascination with the mammal bones and all that stuff. Can you try to make that? Would you write that?
I don't know that I would write it. It would be interesting to sort of investigate what that is. And why. Well, but just again, on the surface of it, here's a guy who's now, for all intent and purposes, a paleontologist, right? So he's looking at sort of the dark ages. He's looking at, you know, before mankind walked on the earth. He's looking at a kind of history where it really was about nothing but survival.
Interesting. We see you interact a lot with Olivia.
Yes.
We see you interact with Jake. we see you interact with Fitz. Who do you like seeing Papa Pope act against? Who do you like seeing Rowan act against?
Almost anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always going to be different. His relationship with Jake is very different, obviously, than his relationship with because Jake is an adversary. I mean, a real kind of you want my job adversary. With Olivia, it's absolutely personal. And talking to her is talking to my daughter, but not being able to tell her. I mean, at one point, I think she asked me, you know, did you, when you were allowing me to blame you for my mother and blah, 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 were you protecting me from something? And his response was, if you want those answers, you're never going to get them from me. Cyrus is as much of a monster as I am. He also, for all intent and purposes, is an underling, so he's someone I sort of dismiss in certain kinds of ways. So it's all different. It's all different.
Vulture said that you were the ultimate shade thrower, your character. I assume you know what that means.
Shady?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we discuss that line about Olivia and her legs?
Oh. Well,
what did you think of that?
I think it's, I mean, first of all, I'm a father and I have 2 daughters.
So
if there were men in my daughter's life that I thought they were acting inappropriately with, and as a result they were hurting themselves, I probably would have said something very similar. Because I think there are times where being absolutely blunt is the only way to get something across, and I think that's what he was doing.
Okay. Because a lot of people were asking, what would he do if he were really Olivia's father? What advice would he give her?
I think in that set of circumstances, a lot of the same advice. I mean, I think that he thinks Fitz is not only unsuitable, as he said, as a suitor. One, because he's married, but 2, because of all the things I say about him. I think that he is weak and he's inefficient and he's never worked for anything. He is. If I call him a boy, it means that he's not quite a man. So why would I want my daughter to be with anyone less than a man? The first time she ever tells me that she has a boyfriend, my response is he worthy of you? So clearly, I don't think that Fitz, for any number of reasons, is worthy of Olivia.
Right. Do you like doing these flashback scenes?
Oh, I love them.
Talk about that. I mean, we learn so much. It all like comes together, and we see, you know, why he is the way he is in some. And
well, because we don't know from episode to episode what's going to happen, then anything we do, all we do know is the history of what we've done so far, right? So if embodied in that history is also flashbacks, then just like you, I'm learning, oh, I see, this is sort of how these things sort of came to be. This is who he is. This is why he is, in some ways, the way he is. So yeah, they're wonderful, they're helpful, they're interesting to do, they're fun, you know.
They are. I like watching them. Let's get to another question. Let's see. Oh, from Nero again. What are your thoughts about the hangar conversation between Rowan and Olivia?
Well, again, that was the beginning of this season, and it was the way, if you will, if this were a golf game, the way the season teed off, and he was teed off.
Yes.
In terms of telling, I mean, the very first thing he does is he tells her why he wants to put her on that plane. That's what that entire monologue is about. You think this is how things are happening. This is really, how, in my opinion, how things are happening. And this is what I think you need to do in order to save yourself. Whether you do that or not, obviously, is up to you, but here's the opportunity. And of course, she's pretty ticked off that she does not do what he offers, as children often don't. So I think a lot of that really was his first real opportunity, because you get the sense that they've been estranged for a long time. So you get the sense that it's the first opportunity for him to tell her all the things that he thinks about her set of circumstances and what he thinks she should do about it. And the want in that case is get on the plane and get yourself out of this.
Right. We had another question about what's been your favorite monologue. Would you say that one, the 183? Which one really resonated with you?
Well, the 183 for sure. The other one that was fun is, Run, where he actually threatens. I think the wonderful thing about Rowan's monologues is that Rowan uses language like a sheath, if you will. And then what's in that sheath is whatever action he proposes. So for all intent and purposes, his bite is devastating, and rather his bark is devastating, and his bite is more than likely lethal. So I think all of that is embodied in those monologues. What he says is pretty much what he's going to do. That's what I've learned over the course of season 3, is if I say it, that's what I intend on doing. And I just have to wait until sort of it gets delivered to me at a table read to find out how it's going to get done.
Right. Well, and race is also like extremely tied to the series, in front of the camera and behind the scenes. And Rowan delivers this the monologue about, you know, we have to fight harder. Talk a little bit about, you know, being that sort of voice on the show, like bringing that to light, like full on.
I think on some level, Rowan for Shonda is a kind of channel to talk about certain things in a way that no one else on the show can talk about them. I mean, as diverse as our cast is and as the show is, no one ever brings up race. Rowan is the first one that I know of in this particular way who brings it up the way he does, to say we have to work twice as hard to get half as much. I can't remember which paper it was, but there was a whole then list of all the things that black fathers might say to their children along that same level. I certainly know that I heard those things from my father when I was younger. Things like, I mean, I think in the Run speech, you know, I talked about in that house they called the White House. So he will say these things because he's kind of older generation. So his struggle, I mean, you know, we talk about Obama, for instance. I mean, look, in a way, how quickly he came to office. For somebody like Rowan, it must have taken him a very much longer time to sort of gain whatever he gained in terms of that kind of complete power, because everything about the country as he was coming up through it was, I'm sure, dead against it. So however he got there must not have been very pretty. Right.
And you came onto the show knowing that you would be revealed as Olivia's father. Do you think, had you not known, you would have played the character differently, or having that in your mindset sort of helped you bring a certain component to him?
Well, it certainly would have changed if I didn't know that. I would have been just playing the fact that I'm the head of this organization. What it also helped was I was given the opportunity to hold a real personal secret that no one, including Carrie, knew about. So that was really perfect for who Rowan/Eli is, so that there was this constant. There was a conversation that Scott and I were having, because I told him I was supposed to go off and do Romeo and Juliet, and then in the middle of all of that is when I got offered to come back to do the show again. And at one point he said to me, "So, you know, are you excited about going back to Broadway?" And I said, "Well," I said, "we'll see." I said, "Something I think a little bit more interesting has happened." And he because I said it that way, he just kind of left it. And I thought, perfect, because it's exactly the kind of thing I wanted to be able to do, is hold all these secrets, because it gave me insight as to who Rowan is.
Well, and you must have known that the reveal would be something to remember, but the fact that it was just a one-word moment, like with a question mark, I mean, talk about playing that out. I asked Carrie last year, like, how many takes did that take? Like, did you practice dad, like dad, and she was like, basically. And then like the fallout from that, because that had people like going crazy on Twitter.
It was, well, the response was what you hope for. If we hadn't gotten that response, we'd have thought, ooh, I guess nobody cares.
Right.
But when we shot the scene, obviously we had read it in the table read, but when we shot it, both Carrie and I turned to each other and we said, we really didn't know what the relationship was. I mean, how did they become estranged? How long had they been estranged? Was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? I mean, we didn't know any of that, and neither did Tom Verico, who directed that episode. And so we shot it at least 3 or 4 different ways, trying to figure out, all right, one of these in Shonda's mind is what she's looking for.
Right.
And then we just had to build from that. Again, that's, I think, why Shonda started season 3 the way she did in terms of that monologue.
Is it any surprise that Shonda now has a night on ABC all to herself?
Surprise? I don't know that anyone could have predicted that. Wonderful, absolutely. She deserves, 8 to 11. I mean, I think that I don't know of any other black female showrunner who's had that going for her. So, God bless.
Well, and like before you came up here, I mean, people were talking about, I know him from Terminator, or like my colleague was like the brother from another planet. How do you find that people are saying like, I'm gonna go back and watch that, I didn't know you were in that, or what has the response been like?
Well,
do you feel like reinvigorated somehow?
Oh, definitely reinvigorated. But on Twitter, you see things like, you know, I just saw Papa Pope in blah 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 blah, whatever. I didn't know he was in that show. I just saw Papa Pope. I got one today, I think it was. I think the person said something like, every time I see Papa Pope in another show, I think, you know, what is this sneaky bastard up to? Because they can't sort of remove themselves from Rowan. So, and I think all that's great. For the longest time, I was getting tweets about Byron in different world. So, you know, I think some of those tweets were, oh, I see Rowan is the way he is because Whitley left him at the altar. You know,
nice.
So yeah. So it's fun.
So, I mean, I hope we'll see you in season 4. I expect we will.
According to the way we ended, it looks like it. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of mischievous, I'm sure, is coming our way from you.
Well, again, I think I don't know how she's going to unfurl it at all, but certainly the blowback on what I've done is certainly in the future.
So, how do you calm down during this time of, you know, respite a little bit?
Well, I thought I was going to take some vacation time. I actually had planned to take between May, June, and July. I was going to take it one week in each to go away. None of that's happening. Between having to, I mean, I live on the East Coast, so having to fly back and forth between the East and West Coast for these kinds of events, having graduations and somebody's concert and somebody's softball game and somebody else's baseball game, you know, family things. We thought, well, no, we're not going anywhere. So the things that are coming up, I'm supposed to do something for Disney. This is the 30th anniversary of Lion King, so they've set up a series of weekends where people come in and will narrate a curtailed version of the show, and I will do a workshop of a play called Turn Me Loose about Dick Gregory in July.
And this is like the time, too, when people binge that haven't been watching. So you better be ready on Twitter to deal with like the same stuff you've already dealt with this season in terms of you're mean.
Well, again, you know, as long as it's I love you, I hate the character, that's fine.
Okay. Well, Rowan, those are my... Look.
See?
Oh, my God. Joe, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure talking to you.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you.
If you guys want to catch more of our Emmy chats, visit latimes.com. Thanks.
Bye.